I want to start by welcoming the dozens of presidents and chancellors we have here today. Your efforts are instrumental in shaping our next generation of leaders, and none of this would be possible without your resilience, consistency, and hard work. This is our fifth anniversary, our fifth HBCU fly-in, but our first ever virtual fly-in. I know we'd all rather be together in person, but I want to thank you all for joining us today. Ever since Congressman Walker and I began this tradition 5 years ago, I've been grateful for these annual opportunities to come celebrate together what we've accomplished, the important work you all are doing every single day, and to discuss where we need to go from here. We've been working hard to ensure you all have the support you need throughout this pandemic. For the nearly 300,000 HBCU students across this country, it's important now, more than ever, that we do what is necessary to ensure the continued success of our HBCUs. When the pandemic hit, we allocated more than $1.4 billion in HBCU funding in the CARES Act. We also provided another $1.3 billion in loan forgiveness for HBCUs at the end of last year. Last year, we also passed the Partners Act, which strengthens the partnerships between our federal agencies and HBCUs by expanding programs and grants HBCUs can participate in. This passed the Senate, and guess what? It passed the Senate unanimously. Nothing happens in the Senate unanimously. So God bless y'all for bringing all of us together. And before the pandemic, we were able to secure permanent funding for our HBCUs the first time ever and took important first steps towards simplifying FAFSA through the Bipartisan Future Act. I know as we take stock of these accomplishments, none of this would have been possible without your passionate engagement.
Hello, this is Harry Williams, President and CEO of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. On behalf of TMCF, I want to welcome you to the 5th Annual HBCU Presidents and Chancellors Fly-In. This year's theme, HBCUs Redefining CEO, Cultivating Executive Opportunities, coincides perfectly with TMCF's vision, changing the world one leader at a time. The Fly-In is an opportunity for our presidents and chancellors to interact with our federal elected and appointed officials around our shared goal of making our HBCUs better. This will benefit our students, our community, and our nation. I would like to highlight the legislative accomplishments that TMCF has been at the forefront of in partnership with our allies in Congress, like Senator Tim Scott, Senator Chris Coons, and Congresswoman Alma Adams, and our companion advocacy organizations in NAFPO and UNCF. We have seen a 33% increase in discretionary Title III funding. We passed the Future Act, which made permanent our mandatory Title III funding. We were able to pass the HBCU Partners Act, which mandates intentional engagement by the federal agencies with our schools, and in so doing will help build institutional capacity. We were able to eliminate over $1 billion in both HBCU CAP finance program and emergency Hurricane Katrina loan debt. And in the midst of this unprecedented situation brought on by COVID-19, we have secured more than $2 billion in total supplemental relief for HBCUs to keep our institutions moving forward, despite the challenges presented by having to navigate the challenges presented by the ongoing pandemic. These gains would have been impossible without the bipartisan support and engagement, largely generated by both the creation of this event in 2017 and the hard work of the bipartisan HBCU caucus. Senator Tim Scott, thank you on behalf of all 47 TMCF member schools, and indeed anyone who is affiliated with or has an affinity for any HBCU, for the leadership that you have shown both within the Senate and in Congress as a whole, and for your willingness to be a champion for our institution. We owe you a debt of gratitude. While we are not able to join together in D.C. as we would ideally prefer it to be, we nonetheless look forward to another engaging and fruitful HBCU fly-in. Thank you all.
Good morning. My name is Ladrigas Murray, Senior Vice President of Public Policy and Government Affairs at UNCF. I bring you greetings on behalf of Dr. Michael Lomax, our President and CEO. I hope everyone here today knows how important this event and those like it truly are. The federal government is the single most important funder to HBCUs. And I would argue that the relationship our institutions share with Congress is the chief among the three branches of government, because Article 1 of the Constitution states that Congress has the power of the purse. For over 150 years, our institutions have overflowed with talented students, previously denied the right to learn by law. Those students never lack for support, as HBCUs have always found the secret to taking a student from an underserved background is to provide them with services, believe in them, and let the greatness grow. The only thing our institutions have ever been denied are resources. I hope today's discussions around opportunities will revolve and explore issues of how to take these landmark institutions, help them garner funding, improve infrastructure, get more involved in the business of STEM-related research, and procure even more resources to level the field of play for institutions which do more to take students from where they start to the high level of achievement where they finish, having more impact than any other group of institutions in the United States today. So, with that, we at UNCF, representing our 37 private HBCUs that are our members, as well as the 10,000 students at 1,100 different colleges and universities that we support with $100 million in scholarships annually, we commend Senator Tim Scott, and we hope for a successful convening. Here's to another good year, and thank you, Senator Scott.
Your institutions have a tremendous impact on this nation. You think about HBCUs collectively, 3% of higher education institutions producing nearly 1/5 of all bachelor degrees. $15 billion direct economic impact, creating hundreds of thousands of jobs.
In 3 fiscal years, Congress has increased HBCU-related spending by about $195 million.
80% of judges flow through HBCUs.
Face-to-face interaction works. By coming up here, it matters. Thank you. Thank you for all of you who are here. Thank you for what you do for our students every single day.
Half of the doctors and the lawyers of color come from those 3% of HBCUs. Your vigilance, your determination, your tenacity, your fortitude have all paid off on behalf of 300,000 plus students.
Leaders of historically Black colleges and universities from around the country gathered in Washington, D.C. Presidents, along with chancellors of various HBCUs from around the country, attended a panel discussion yesterday. Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina helped organize this bipartisan panel, which credited HBCUs for their strong community bonds.
We've had some success because of your participation, your clarity, and your prioritization of what must be a priority for this nation and for HBCUs going forward. So thank you for that. HBCUs continue to produce some of the most talented individuals on earth. My hope this day is that you will leave encouraged, inspired, and that you will come back next year for the next iteration of our continuation of engaging HBCUs for meaningful progress that can be measured in lives changed. Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, HBCU schools are paramount to the historical existence of African Americans, period, because they were birthed out of pain. They were birthed out of the lack of opportunity and the lack of societal equation, if you will. And so when you think about how HBCUs have evolved and the challenges that they faced, society itself has found ways to extract some of the best, if you will, quality at that time out of HBCUs and take advantage of those things as well. When it comes down to athletics, when it comes down to education, when it comes down to experienced folks, they have recruited some of the best talent in the country from our culture and have built great things for society off of the backs of so many African Americans that go unnoticed. When you take the women down in NASA, you take those folk as well, and you're just not hearing about their stories. And unfortunately, they're not celebrated in time enough. Some of them have passed on and couldn't celebrate with everyone. But HBCUs has a significant impact on society that has gone unnoticed and has not been valued as it should be. I'm proud to say just about every HBCU person that I've ran into have been superior in my mind's eye, has been excellent. So it goes to show how these professors and these schools have taken pride not only in the education of their students, but preparing them for what society is going to demand of them. And they are well equipped for that. Well, HBCU schools and what we're looking to do, some of these schools happen to be in opportunity zones, which was Senator Tim Scott actually was co-authored this thing and spearheaded this thing and created these opportunities for us to really get engaged with HBCU schools on a totally different level than I would have before. Because before, when you think about the plight which I took, obviously the opportunities were positioned differently through sports, through these bigger institutions, if you will, and these more public institutions and more visible institutions for what I was trying to get accomplished in my life, which was through sport, through football, and on the big stage, so you can go on to the next level and do your thing at the NFL if you were fortunate enough to do that. But when it comes down to HBCUs, trust me, they have never been forgotten about in my mind. Maybe in others, but not in my mind. I mean, because when I think about Walter Payton, people who I admired, I think about Walter Payton, who came from HBCU school. Think about Jerry Rice, HBCU schools. Guys that I played with with the Dallas Cowboys, Isaac Hope, HBCU school. And that's all they talk about, man. Them historical Black colleges, the SWAC. So, I mean, being indoctrinated in that whole thinking and actually looking at these schools and what they've been able to accomplish from a educational institutional standpoint, I see the HBCU schools like the Black harvest of society. And so when this opportunity comes around and you see the challenges that they face, whether it's the school here in Paul Quinn, here in South Dallas, when you see schools like that and you see some of the challenges that they face, and this opportunity zones come up, yes, you want to do something. And to me, from a charitable standpoint, me and my family have always been able to give back to our local community through educational experiences and life experiences. And so this is another way to go even deeper and tap right into the HBCU schools, because dollars are looking for opportunities taxpayer dollars or discount dollars, if you will, are looking to go into the community. And this is one way to make that happen, by upgrading the facilities, whether it's through multifamily, mixed use type of facilities for these universities, or even upgrading the educational facilities. All of those things are on the table. Just a matter of how do you get in, who you partner with, and what we're able to accomplish together versus trying to accomplish individually. Here's one thing that I've learned. To whom much is given, much is expected, or much is required. No matter how far you go, how high you go, my mother told me this: never forget where you come from. Because the day that you do is the day that you get disconnected from your culture. And I think we all have a responsibility to help our culture. And I'm not talking about a handout. There's a difference and a distinct difference between handing out some stuff. I'm talking about creating opportunities for people to grow and expand and experience the world in a totally different way than what they are currently experiencing. But you have to get outside of the boundaries of your limitations in order to understand what is the possibility. And society itself, or the systemic issues that we face, has to be addressed. Because if we all truly want to be equal, and that is through the spirit of competition, that's which I come from. I come from the world of competition. And I see that no different than me competing for the business. Yes, it's great to have a relationship. But if I'm not qualified to do the job, the relationship doesn't matter, because I'm jeopardizing the relationship as well. But if I'm qualified to do the job and I got a relationship, I can enhance the relationship as I perform my duties. Whether it's on the football field, or whether it's in the boardroom, or whether it's in business, wherever it is, whether it's serving our communities like Senator Tim Scott is doing. We have a tremendous responsibility to take care of each other. There's only one race. We can call it we can call it all kinds of colors. Only one race, and that's the human race. And if we take care of the human race aspect of it, we won't ever forget where we come from. We will always be inspired to help another person, always be inspired to do better, always inspired to think outside of ourselves. I think right now, people are so selfish that they are easily forgetting the fundamentals of who we are as people. And everybody should have an opportunity to be the very best version of themselves as possible. Now it's up to that individual to take control and take hold of that and own it and take responsibility of where they need to go. I can't take you places. See, there's an old saying that if I take you fishing, you can eat for a day. If I teach you how to fish, you can eat for a lifetime. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about for me. And so that means I must leave my community better. Once I go into it and transform it, I got to leave it better than it was when I got there. So when it comes down to the C-suites and to the boardrooms and everything else, we need to have people of color and of all kinds of races sitting at the table, because the world is not just all white, nor is it all black, nor is it all Hispanic, nor Asian. The world is a melting pot of people within the diversity of thought is extremely, extremely important when you're sitting around a boardroom making decisions on how you're going to impact every community. And it has to go beyond just what you're making in your pocket. It has to exceed the boundaries of limitations. And finances, in some cases, when you start talking about corporations, you're talking about trillion-dollar tech companies, you're talking about multi-billion dollars transportation companies, et cetera, logistic companies, and on and on. It has to provoke change. And because there's no reason why we all cannot be living in harmony to do better for our human race. But I'm just saying we may have to do things to control our own destiny. And therefore, we need people in the Senate. We need people in the House. We need people sitting at the highest places in order to help steer some of the decisions that we're making and how these decisions are made on our behalf without us sitting at the table. 9 times out of 10, decisions are being made at the table that we're not even sitting at. And therefore, our thoughts, our opinions, the impact that we actually have an opportunity to make is not oftentimes realized. And the efforts, we're fighting an uphill battle and we're getting stronger, but we're not going anyplace. And so if we truly want to make an impact, not only do we have to come together as a culture and as a society, but we also have to be able to change the hearts of men and women that are sitting in position right now. This is the time to be actually working with folks that have the capability to execute against the game plan and bring others, small minority businesses, along with them so they can grow as well and have a sense of responsibility there also. So that's what I would just say. And I'm trying to help as much as I can, and looking forward to having an opportunity to work with each and every one of you. Looking forward to just getting a chance to meet you, because I mean, from afar, we on Zoom and everything else, but to sit down and to understand your needs and your requirements and to see what we can offer from what we do is really what I look forward to. And that's, I would just say, keep fighting, keep on teaching, and let's look to work together to build a greater university for every HBCU school around the country.
Diversity brings to a task, to a problem, a variety of perspectives, backgrounds, views, experiences, etc. And in doing so, a diversity allows one to have the absolute best solution to any task at hand. Diversity also helps expand the minds of those who get a chance to experience it.
I can say with certainty that diversity matters. It matters because it's the surest way to harness the full potential of every human being and to find common, collaborative solutions to our world's most complex problems. Diversity matters.
The achievement of the American ideal, e pluribus unum, cannot be fully realized without the embrace of the largesse of diversity in all of its manifestations, inclusive of race, gender, and class. Shaw University and other historically Black colleges and universities have long employed diversity as a means to achieve its missions.
Thank you, Senator Tim Scott, for your leadership here in our state, South Carolina. We appreciate you. Our HBCUs are treasures. Why? Because we recruit our workforce and talent straight from the HBCUs. We are so pleased with the talent and the education that our HBCUs are providing to us as business owners and members of the community. And why is that so important? Because diversity, equity, inclusion are all part of the motto and the mission at Nephron Pharmaceuticals Corporation. And it's because we know that productivity and success come from a diverse population, a diverse workforce. Thank you, Senator Tim Scott, for your leadership here in our state, and thank you for including us in this very important mission.
Diversity means that everyone matters. Diversity means taking people from different backgrounds. You put them all together and they bring all of their talents and they come up with a unique perspective as a group so that what we have is something beautiful, something sustainable, something transformative that is fair and equitable to everyone.
Greater inclusion and representation lifts everyone up, while prejudice and discrimination weighs us all down. When any person or group of people are excluded from society, we are all deprived of the fruits of their ideas and participation. In so many ways, our fortunes as Americans are bound together. When we create equal opportunities for others, we are truly expanding opportunities for ourselves, our families, and our descendants. The lack of diversity is the root cause of so many problems. And so inclusion should also be the keystone of our solutions. Our nation's HBCUs have consistently demonstrated that we are the solution for many, if not all, of America's problems.
First, let me say thank you to each of my new panelists who volunteered to participate in our discussion. The theme for this panel is the Black Digital Footprint, Diversity in Tech. Our questions will focus on the need for more diversity in the tech industry. Additionally, we will talk about how HBCUs can provide opportunities for students to enter tech-related fields. Our panelists come from professional backgrounds that span from the private sector to public service. Each of them is a champion for HBCUs and a passionate advocate who promotes diversity in the workplace. It brings me great honor to introduce our panelists today. First, I would like to introduce the great Congresswoman Alma Adams, who represents North Carolina's 12th District. She is a proud graduate of North Carolina A&T University. Congresswoman Adams has been outspoken as a champion for HBCUs. Her home state of North Carolina is the home to 11 outstanding HBCUs. Congresswoman Adams is also the founder of the HBCU Caucus, and I am grateful to lead that charge in the Senate. Our next panelist is Sean Perryman. Sean is the Director of Social Impact Policy and Counsel at Internet Association, an organization devoted to economic empowerment and policies that protect the internet. Sean also serves on the FCC's Advisory Committee on Diversity and Digital Empowerment. Sean is also the president of the Fairfax County NAACP, where he is the youngest president in the branch's 101-year history. He is currently a Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor in Virginia. Time will be reserved for attendees. Hear me now. Time is reserved for you all to ask questions. We'll begin with a question that can be answered by both of our panelists. Let's go ahead and get started right now. First question is, I want to begin asking each of you to briefly explain your path to success. This is a really important question because each and every one of us have a different path to success. That way, our audience can better understand your motivation and your personal journey. Your story is a really important part. We can start, of course, with the Congresswoman, Congresswoman Adams.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott, and thank you for inviting me today, but also thank you for your commitment to our schools. Thank you for your question. My background isn't unique to myself. Many HBCU students and alums across the country have followed a similar path. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, walking the ghetto streets. My mom did domestic work, of course, to make the ends meet, and she didn't attend an HBCU or any CU for that matter. I'm a first generation college student. And
Awesome.
I'm sure that it's because of that I was able to go on to North Carolina A&T State University. I'm a proud two-time Aggie, as you said. I completed my PhD from The Ohio State University only because of North Carolina A&T. So I'm walking the halls of Congress today as a proud HBCU graduate, a former professor at Bennett College in Greensboro for over 40 years, but proud to advocate for all of our nation's schools.
Awesome. I will say, I'm sorry, Congresswoman Dr. Adams, that is good to say and good to know. The Ohio State University, you all have been, of course, in the college football playoffs too many times as a University of South Carolina fan. I wish we were as good as you guys at playing football. And frankly, from an education perspective, I know that you have a lot to be proud of, and your family has so much to be proud of. Thank you, Congresswoman. You and I have a long history of working together to champion HBCUs and provide students with opportunities to succeed. Together, we secured permanent funding for HBCUs through the Future Act. We bolstered engagement between federal agencies through the HBCU Partners Act. Just recently, we worked with our colleagues in Congress to secure $285 million for new Connecting Minority Communities pilot program. Can you talk more about how your efforts, our efforts in Congress, have started to close the gap in funding for HBCUs? And perhaps more specifically, would you mention how our most recent accomplishment will close some of the gaps in broadband access for HBCUs and their surrounding communities?
Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you. Oh, excuse me.
Tim is great. I love that.
Okay.
Stay right where you are, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your question and for your work, but for also understanding that the systemic disadvantages that our schools face. One of my first acts, as you've mentioned, when I came here was to put together the Congressional Bipartisan HBCU Caucus. I'm glad that you are working with us. And there were three reasons for it: to create a national dialogue about the importance of HBCUs, not only to myself and to the African-American community, but also to build a 21st century workforce in the economy. Secondly, to educate members of Congress and their staff on the issues impacting HBCUs, and then to advance meaningful bipartisan legislation as we have continued to do. To date, the caucus has secured many wins, as you mentioned, with the support of the Congressional Black Caucus and other key advocacy groups like TMCF, and I certainly appreciate their support today. But just as Congress, last Congress, we were able to pass the Capital Finance Debt Relief Act. Now that discharged over $1.3 billion in debt held by HBCUs. So we've led efforts to secure over $1 billion in the COVID relief funding for HBCUs and MSIs in this CARES Act. We passed the Partners Act last year, and thank you so much for all of your support and help in that. But it will then, all of these efforts, I think, will really help our students and our schools as we look at infrastructure and all the other things that now they can do. And certainly this funding will support them in doing that. But we've got a lot of work still left to do, and we're going to continue to bring up the issues impacting our schools.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. I will say this without any question. It's hard to find a better champion for some of the challenges that we faced. And Dr. Adams, as I am now going to call her every time I see her, the fact of the matter is that she focuses so much on other people that it's good to learn new things about her that you can read certainly in her resume, you can read in her biography, but it's powerful to understand the journey that she took to become the person that she is today. That is awesome. I took notes, by the way, Dr. Adams. One of the things that I love about what you said is that part of our responsibility in supporting HBCUs is to build the workforce of America. We want to make sure that the workforce of America is populated with powerful HBCU graduates, because when you look at doctors, nurses, teachers, principals, business owners, general officers in the military, disproportionately, those folks who are of color come from HBCUs more than it does any other institution of higher learning and education. Our next panelist is Sean Perryman. I have said this a few minutes ago that Sean has done a great job of taking his skill set and presenting it to the workforce and looking for ways to create economic mobility for folks by bridging the digital divide is very important. So thank you for being with us, Mr. Perryman. I have spent a great deal of my time in Congress promoting public-private partnerships. It is my firm belief that such partnerships provide better opportunities for communities, for families, and most importantly, for all of our students. In your role at Internet Association, you engage with companies, frankly, like the big ones, Amazon, Google, and Facebook. What successes have you seen in the private sector to promote diversity in the workplace? And how can businesses and other organizations leverage HBCUs to bridge the gap for students and disadvantaged communities?
First, thank you, Senator Scott, for having me. I really appreciate being here. This is such an important conversation that we're engaging in. I think you touched upon it. The public-private partnerships is really going to be at the heart of success in getting more diverse workforce, especially as it relates to the tech workforce. And we have really great examples of that with the Internet Association and some of our members in what they're doing. For instance, Amazon has the HBCU conference, which offers opportunities for students to get that corporate exposure. They're working with folks like that. We have AWS Educate, which is Amazon Web Services, also working with colleges like Bowie State University. They do a 2-day student-centered event at Amazon HQ2. So I think when we look at this and we see those partnerships, that is how we are going to build the workforce of tomorrow, by bringing them in today and figuring out how we can expose these students to the tech workforce, but also expose the tech companies to these very, very talented students.
That's a great answer. I will say I love the workforce of tomorrow is built today. And sometimes we miss the clear fact that you have to invest today in the opportunities of tomorrow. And not enough folks of color, specifically African Americans, spend as much time as you do, sir, understanding, appreciating that digital divide and how to bridge that gap. And thank you for bringing your expertise to the table to bear against some of the problems that have been systemic, that can be erased and eliminated through understanding, frankly, technology, but then also how to bridge the divide as you are. Congresswoman Adams, your personal connection to HBCU institutions begins, of course, with your time as a student at North Carolina A&T University. Since then, you've taught in a classroom as a professor at Bennett College. You've served as a member of Congress. You've even collected a wonderful collection of hats. I mean, this is something, one of those fun facts you gotta know about Ms. Adams is that she has got a fantastic collection of hats. Your journey is one of pain, but it's also a beautiful one. And I can't help but to wonder how your education at HBCU has played such a unique and large, maybe even oversized role in your life. What was the most meaningful part of your education as a student at A&T? And also, what do you think is so unique and powerful about students who graduate from HBCUs as they enter into the career path that Mr. Perryman just spoke really powerfully about?
Well, thank you so much. And my numbers now are well over 1,300 in terms of my hat collection. And
really? 1,300?
Yeah, I'm an artist as well. You may not know that. I taught art,
ma'am.
So I'm a collector as well. And so I'm a printmaker. So I am a practicing artist when I have the chance to get in my studio. But you know, there are many meaningful parts about my experience there. But if I had to pick one, I think it would be seeing the culture of excellence on the campus. So when you first step on the campus of North Carolina A&T, you quickly understand that the campus is full of students who are ready to compete in any industry. The culture has been amplified since my time in the school. The A&T is now the largest public HBCU, the third in the UNC system in research, and students are competing in just about every industry. I think that what makes them unique and powerful is the understanding that the odds may be stacked against them, but they choose to compete anyway. I was, as I said, a first generation student, not fully prepared to do college work, but North Carolina A&T made a committed investment in me. They molded and shaped me into what they saw and knew that I could become. And so, these students, we don't have a lot of money, basically low income students. They don't have trust funds and that kind of thing. But I think the commitment that our schools make, I think really is just instrumental in terms of the success of these students who leave our schools. But nothing could be finer, Senator Scott, than to be in Carolina at an HBCU.
100%. I'm glad you included South Carolina. May the Lord bless you indeed.
Right.
In the Carolinas. I like that. But you are certainly a woman of many hats, not only the 1300, but a PhD, someone who has a fine, unique talent in art, as well as a collection of hats. You prove to all of us it's not just where you're from, it's how far you travel to get to where you are that really matters. And thank God we have you as a living, breathing example of what the possibilities are for our kids who today may feel a little discouraged. Sometimes when they look into the future, they don't know what's going to happen. You are proof in the pudding that all things are not only possible, but with hard work, and I'm going to include the grace of God and a strong family system, you can go beyond your wildest imagination, and you are helping us understand that. Mr. Perryman, earlier you mentioned some of the successes you have seen with businesses and organizations who are promoting diversity. You mentioned ways that businesses can leverage HBCUs to bridge the academic and professional gaps for students. What challenges in promoting diversity do you see moving forward, and how does that look especially in the tech industry? And why is it so critical that we confront those challenges in ways that include promoting and celebrating diversity in all industries, but specifically, as you know, Mr. Perryman, the tech field is one where if you're not a part of that STEM or STEAM, you might be steamrolled from a financial perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, the tech, and what I'm pleased to see and heartened by is to see that tech is getting more creative in how they're bridging those gaps that we talked about. Awesome. We had, for instance, PayPal. They're doing a partnership with Dillard University and Wiley College to underwrite a report on the financial health of the Black community. So this is something they could have went to anyone to do, but they went to these colleges strategically because this is giving those students this opportunity to do this fantastic research, and it's also giving back to that community. But I think the challenges that we see, we have to get creative in how we do it, but it's the same challenge that we see across America. We simply don't have enough people getting into the STEM fields. We need to promote STEM education, STEAM education, and it's no different in the HBCU space, but we need, especially in that space, because as you mentioned, if you're not a part of that conversation, the technologies that are being developed, if they're being developed by a homogenous workforce, we really have to worry about the impact that it can have on vulnerable communities, low-income communities, and especially communities of color. So we want them to be a part of that workforce so they can contribute to what that technology looks like, so we don't have the discrimination that we saw in the past to get into our future technologies.
Well said, Mr. Perryman. I will say this, that the PayPal Dillard partnership, where students have an opportunity to understand the financial health of the community, their community, is powerful. I used to hear a saying from one of my mentors, you have to study something before you can practice it, and then after you practice it, you can teach it. So getting more financial literacy into the community requires those of us from the community to become experts at studying the outcomes from a financial perspective, practicing the good ways to improve that for our friends, families, and ourselves, and then we can teach it to others. And so that's really powerful for the students at Dillard to have an opportunity to participate with PayPal. And frankly, it's almost as good as getting an internship where you have an opportunity to break bread, rub shoulders and elbows with folks that might one day become future employers, and those students might one day become future teachers of financial literacy in the community. So those future business owners might be learning important lessons through that study. Congresswoman Adams, as a public servant who represents a state with 11 HBCUs, a graduate yourself, you've already described some of the things that Congress has done in the past. You have been a major part of that. I have partnered with you. As you look to the future, what does Congress need to do in order to create a more robust pipeline of opportunity for HBCUs to produce more professionals in the tech sector? What can we do ourselves to be helpful? And can you provide any details about your annual HBCU STEAM event that happens next month? And frankly, next month is next Monday, so it happens really soon.
That's right. It happens on, and we had started out with what we called STEAM Day. We would hold it in March, and it's going to be STEAM Days this year because it'll be a whole week. So it'll be several days, and it does start on the 8th. But, I think it starts center with investing ourselves, making our own investments in Congress. So, we can't ask private entities to do anything that we aren't willing to model ourselves. And so that's why we do the HBCU STEAM Day of Action, which will be STEAM Days. It's a day where HBCUs and companies can join together to jointly advocate to Congress for greater funding and policies that will better support our schools. We've seen strong improvements in the amount of funding that HBCUs have received in the annual appropriations process since we began, but we also had a lot of success passing bills through Congress. And of course, the industry needs to do the work too. And that's why in 2017, we created the HBCU Partnership Challenge to urge companies to partner. We're growing this as well. And to address, to create the pipelines of diverse talent, because that's where they are in our schools. So to date, over 50 companies have taken the pledge to include HBCUs as a key component. And we're working with these companies to connect them with their campuses, with their administrators and students to ensure that these relationships are established and that they grow. So collaboration is really key. Both public, private sectors is critical.
That's awesome. At this time, we are at a place where we would love to take some questions from our virtual audience. Depending on how long each panelist takes with each question, we may not be able to get to all the questions, but we are looking forward to your questions. I'm going to start with my first question that I have, which is to both of you, Dr. Adams, Mr. Perryman. If you were to rank on a scale from 1 to 10, the importance of STEAM education for employment opportunities and business opportunities, how high is it really? And I say that with this caveat. There are some folks who are going to be better prepared to have a job and a career that includes an education that goes through a certification program. There's dignity in all work. So there may be other things that people want to do other than a four-year degree. I think a four-year degree is a powerful weapon that no one can ever take from you. But it does seem to me that the STEM field of work, it's not only powerful, but its growth is exponential. So if you were to encourage current students and frankly, high school students to look at their future and you were ranking the importance of including STEM in your portfolio, how high would you go, Mr. Perryman and Dr. Adams?
Well, Senator Scott, as you mentioned, it takes all types. We're going to need all types of folks and all sorts of training. But I think going forward, if we look at where our society is headed as far as technology, it's probably at an 8 at least, because those are going to be the jobs that are still here. We're always going to need that, especially as there's more automation. So I would have to put it fairly high on the scale if I had to advise a young person, on whether they should get involved in the STEM field.
Excellent. Mr. Perryman gives me an 8. Dr. Adams.
Well, I'm going to give you a 9+.
All right.
I do believe that it is the way of the future. I think it provides wonderful opportunities for young people. And I also know that as you look at the job opportunities today, STEAM is right on time. I mean, the technology, and as a matter of fact, young people will tell you, well, they're going to be able to make more money than they would if they went on and got a 4-year degree and they came out with a lot of debt and had to pay off the loans and so forth. But I think when we look at the businesses and those folks that are actually working with our universities and our students, that's that OJT, that on-the-job training.
Yes.
That really helps them to not only excel while they're doing it, but get them really, really prepared to do the work once they get out into the industry. So I would rate it very, very high. It is the wave of the future. And I think that, I want to encourage all young people. This is a wonderful option. And we need options. And as has already been said, we need people, all types of folks. And so, the thing we want to do is to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to do well, to be able to have a good life and make a good living.
1000% agree. Tony Allen has a question for us, and I think this is more for Mr. Perryman, but both of you are welcome to jump in. How can the FCC work more closely with HBCUs to better broadband? Ms. Perryman, and certainly I know Dr. Adams understands, as she and I and many others in Congress have worked on broadband connection. It's hard, frankly, throughout a pandemic to not have the connection that allows for virtual education, for virtual healthcare appointments, and frankly, for virtual work without a broadband connection. Can you help us understand how the FCC can work more closely with HBCUs to maybe be that hub or other ways to bring broadband closer to the community?
Yeah, and I can't answer for the FCC, but I do serve on an advisory committee, and one of the things that we talk about is digital empowerment and how we can get broadband access. And there are a number of grants out there. I think that we need to make people aware of those, especially within the HBCU community. And frankly, it's working with folks to identify where these spots are that we need better access, and to come up with ideas with how we can get that access to folks. Right now, a lot of times the financial incentives are lacking for some of the companies to invest in that infrastructure. So these are bright students. They have ideas about how to serve these communities. We need to get people thinking on this issue, because as we've seen during the pandemic, this isn't a luxury. This is an absolute necessity for folks. It's how they learn, it's how they work. And so we need to get more people involved in that conversation on how to expand broadband. And I think we can do that through partnerships, both with government and with private industry.
I know Dr. Adams and I have both worked on resources, frankly, money for broadband. And I thank Dr. Adams from being willing to consistently and continuously advance the cause of having connection services throughout the poorer parts of America, which is oftentimes in rural America as well as in the inner cities. And so, Dr. Adams, did you want to add anything to broadband on that before I go to the next question?
I think the points have been made. It will take a partnership to do it. We've got to have the collaboration. Cities can't do it all on their own. HBCUs can't do it on their own. And when we think about our campuses, our schools are over 100 years old. As a matter of fact, about 10 of them are 150 years old. So that's a century plus 5 decades. Wow. So a lot of the buildings are old, that we're not prepared for that. And even when students go home, as you know, during the pandemic, they don't have that broadband, they don't have that access there in their communities. So I think the continuous dialogue that we're having, we need to continue to do that. We've got some bright minds, not just here in Congress, but out in the community and even on the campuses. And our young people, they are thinkers, and I think we need to include them as well. But we need to keep talking about it and working on solutions. Money's going to help, but we also have to deal with a number of other things as well to make it work.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question from a few folks. Ms. Scott, my namesake, not a relative, but my namesake, also is leading this question with a couple of other folks asking a similar question about what data-driven strategies have you seen that encourage students into STEM? Mr. Perryman.
Yeah, so as far as strategies to get more folks into STEM, I think it starts with early childhood education. It can never be too early. We got to make sure that we get young women into STEM as well as people of color. And I think that starts with early childhood education, introducing it into the classroom as early as we can. We actually have a partnership with an organization called CS for All, where we're trying to get more computer science classes in the high schools through the JROTC program. So it's introducing the computer sciences courses as early as high school, but the STEM has to start from the time they enter a school building, getting them involved in that, having after school. And that's going to take funding, and it's also going to take investment. We need to see more boot camps available to folks at affordable prices. So these are all offering the initiatives, but then making it early enough where you capture a student's mind and heart and attention to the STEM field is critical.
Are there some natural organizations, in our community, Black churches serve so many varied functions. When you talk about boot camps, are those at nonprofits, at HBCUs, at churches? Have you seen a formula that has been helpful? Because I will say that it seems to me, and I might be wrong, that from a geographic standpoint, so many of the jobs in tech seems to reside in geographies where there are fewer and fewer African Americans and Hispanics. Certainly the West Coast being an example. I was reading some stories that was talking about the geography of tech, and it's starting to change, which is good news. But if we were looking at experts to be a part of camps, do you see those being located in businesses or in churches or just HBCUs, or do you just use a medley, so to speak?
You know, and I don't have hard data on that, but I think the medley approach that you mentioned is probably best. We want to meet people where they are. So yes. HBCUs obviously provide that. I've seen some really great outreach. For instance, Snap did just a career hosting panel a few weeks ago at Southern University of Baton Rouge. And they have a huge business program. So they did it focused completely on the business students. So I think if we get more of that outreach from tech, just to what you said about the geographic diversity, we need to get to where those students are and place programs there, do panels there, let them have that exposure. I think in this time of crisis with the pandemic, we also have great opportunity because people are more accustomed to virtual learning, virtual environment. And so this gives us the opportunity to reach more people in various locations.
Awesome. I think we're getting down to our last question. I'll just say this to each of the panelists. I want to thank each of the panelists for volunteering your time to participate in our discussion about diversity in the tech industry. I'd also like to thank those folks in the audience who listened to our panelists speak and asked really engaging questions. HBCUs across the country are preparing and producing some of the best and brightest young minds to enter into industries that need more diverse representation. Our next panel is coming up next, but our last question, as I said, we have one final question before we get to the next panel, but I wanted to do my thank yous before we hit the last question. What can the federal government do to make broadband more accessible? That's a question from a lot of folks. We were throwing that in there because so many of our chancellors, presidents, and their representatives have been asking this question. So I'm going to ask Dr. Adams, Alma, if you don't mind, maybe talking about what you think needs to be done. I certainly would add on before she says anything that we have a number of pieces of legislation focusing today on broadband and on connection. I'm actually hopeful that Elon Musk and his journey into space might bring about more ways to connect our rural and inner city kids and families that today are without connection in ways that we haven't even seen come to the market yet. So With that, Dr. Adams, if you have anything you want to add, I would love to hear it before we go to our next panel.
Let me thank you again, Senator Scott. But, I think we have taken some initial steps here in Congress in terms of appropriations to help in this process. And but I also think that we need to bring some folks around the table and have even more discussions about how we can incorporate what we're doing in terms of providing some funding to what's actually going on in the community. I think the gentleman's correct. When we look at our schools and what's going on with tech, we do have to start our young people off early. I'm glad to hear that there's so much interest now in young girls, because we were taught growing up that certain things you just didn't do, and certain areas you didn't enter. But I just think that we need to engage more in terms of conversations about how we can best not only use these appropriations, but what would be some of the thoughts that the tech industry would have, our institutions would have, and just our community in general, because we're seeing a number of our universities putting in high schools for tech, where young students are actually coming to college campuses and beginning to learn. You can be what you see. And I just think that, we'll have these conversations must be ongoing.
Well, there's that is a phrase to remember. You can be what you see. It's very similar to what I have read more times than not in Proverbs 23:7. As a man or a woman thinks in her heart, so she can be. So it is true that in order to be it, sometimes you got to see it. Right. And that is such an important part of it. Do me a favor, Dr. Adams, keep doing what you're doing. You are certainly making a difference. Thank you for, frankly, partnering with me over the last 5 years in this fly-in. It would not have been as successful and impactful had you not partnered with me. And back in the days, we had Mark Walker there with us, but the state of North Carolina has been powerfully represented today by your presence. And I hope that I have a chance to stop by your STEAM event next month. If you'll leave a room for me to watch and pay attention, I'd love to come by and just see how you do what you do, because the future is very bright for our kids.
We'll do that. And thank you for agreeing to serve as my co-chair on the Senate side. I appreciate that so much. And thank you for allowing me to participate in this wonderful panel today.
Absolutely. Thank you for participating. Mr. Perryman, God bless you, man. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your willingness to have a conversation with all of us about your expertise in tech. And I'll say that our next panel is the Shark Tank. You will not want to miss this one. We have two amazing members who are going to make that TV show come to life. It's going to be about venture capital. You'll not want to miss that. We've got Senator Coons from the great state of Delaware coming to participate with us, as well as Senator Hyde-Smith from the great state of Mississippi. Please, for the next few minutes, enjoy this highlight reel. And our next panel starts at 11:30. You don't want to miss that one. It is going to be on fire. See you in just a little bit.
My name is Ivy Taylor, and I'm president of Russ College in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Diversity of thought, opinion, background, and perspective makes life richer and makes us all stronger. At Russ College, we encourage diversity in many ways to create a stronger academic experience and to nurture the development of our students.
Diversity and inclusion are core values that breed success. When we respect and care about each other, in spite of our differences, we all win.
My name is David Martin, and I'm the Manager of Government Relations for Samsung Electronics America. As a proud graduate of Howard University, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the 5th Annual HBCU Fly-In. Samsung has been building its team in America for over 40 years. Today, we have over 20,000 U.S. employees who showcase the entrepreneurial spirit and the collaborative drive that makes America exceptional. Our strength rests on the rich mix of diverse cultures, languages, and experiences across the Samsung family. Using our scale, diversity, and resources, we're able to take new ideas and share them with the world, making life-enhancing and life-saving technologies accessible for all. We acknowledge everyone's uniqueness and support people to feel safe in expressing themselves, encouraging them to draw on their full potential. And that is why diversity is so important. For Samsung, it's a critical ingredient to continuous innovation over the next 40 years and beyond. Diversity helps us build a better tomorrow for everyone. Finally, thank you very much to Senator Tim Scott for hosting this event. And from the Samsung family, happy Black History Month.
I'm Kimberly Ballard Washington, Interim President of Savannah State University. As we continue to witness intolerance, discrimination, and violence, the need for diversity and inclusion and understanding of one another is evident. By embracing diversity and inclusion, we will see that we are more alike than the differences that are displayed. Together, we will learn skills to communicate and interact with communities and ideas that are unfamiliar to us. We'll gain a more worldly view for success in classrooms, boardrooms, and the global society. It's hard to hate those we know.
I am the president of the University of the Virgin Islands. No nation can prosper on limited talent. What universities do is try to ensure that the necessary talent is there. What UVI and other HBCUs do is to make sure that talent that others would overlook is inspired, nurtured, and supported so that this nation can have a diverse pool of individuals who can allow it to reach its full potential.
Hello, I'm Elwood Robinson, Chancellor at Winston-Salem State University. Together, our differences make a strong and beautiful world community. Even in the face of intolerance, discrimination, and violence, we must continuously promote diversity and respond to those forces with love and a celebration of our differences. It is the constant work of making sure all voices are being valued, respected, and considered. Diversity is the experiential tapestry woven by each member of the human race that enables us to expand our possibilities.
Hello, everyone. If you said Professor Locke for the first question, you are correct. So congratulations to everyone who answered it correctly. We are now going to move on to our second question. Let's see who gets it right. Hello, everyone. If you said Florida A&M University, you are correct. They are the Rattlers. So it looks like the majority of us got that answer correct. That ends this polling section for now, and we will be starting the next panel, Shark Tank, in just a few minutes. Thanks so much.
Welcome back to the 5th Annual HBCU Fly-In. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our distinguished panelists on diversity in the tech sector. Now, we will transition to our next panel, Shark Tank. Now, for those of you not familiar with the Shark Tank, I'm not sure how that is, but it's a possibility. Folks like Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavs, Kevin O'Leary, Lori Greiner, Barbara Corcoran, as well as Damon John, all listen to pitches. It's an interesting show, and we are going to talk about promoting inventiveness and access to capital. If you've ever watched the Shark Tank, you've seen what I just described. You've seen aspiring business folks come out there, sometimes dressed in interesting costumes, sometimes just in t-shirts, but all the time looking for potential investors to partner with them to start their journey. These entrepreneurs then make their pitch. The investors can pass or they can counteroffer. Sometimes they are asking for, I know I watched it just a couple of nights ago, they were asking 20% for $200,000 in capital in their business. Sometimes the shark will say it's not worth it, it's not a good fit for me. Or sometimes they say, well, I'll give you 10% for $300,000, and that's when the fun really begins. The question is, are they willing to take a stake because they see value in something that is not yet materialized? Well, during this panel, we will emphasize the importance of preparing students for that once-in-a-lifetime pitch to receive the financial and technical support needed to run successful companies. Our panelists today includes the distinguished senator from the great state of Mississippi, Cindy Hyde-Smith. Senator Hyde-Smith is the first woman elected to represent Mississippi in Congress. In the 117th Congress, Senator Hyde-Smith serves on the Appropriations Committee, Agriculture, Rules, and the Energy Committee. Prior to becoming a U.S. Senator for Mississippi, Hyde-Smith was elected Mississippi Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce in 2011 and served 12 years in the state Senate, including 8 years as the chairwoman of the Ag Committee. So you can tell she is without question committed to the cause as it relates to agriculture and her great state of Mississippi. Cindy, thank you for joining us. I look forward to hearing your comments. Next, we will introduce Senator Chris Coons, who represents the state of Delaware. He is also my Senate HBCU caucus co-chair for the 117th Congress. Senator Coons serves on the Senate Appropriations, Foreign Relations, Judiciary, Small Business, and Ethics Committees. Before his election to the U.S. Senate in 2010, Senator Coons served as Newcastle County Council President for 4 years and Newcastle County Executive for 6 years. Now, this is a place where I pause. Senator Coons and I share the similar background as it relates to local government service. He and I have laughed oftentimes about how, I was going to say amazing, but truth be told, painful sometimes it can be to be the county executive, the county chairman. Prior to serving as county executive, he worked as an attorney for one of the 200 largest privately held manufacturing companies in all of the United States. Senator Coons, thank you for being with us, and I look forward to hearing your comments. You and I have both served on the Small Business Committee, and we've both worked on numerous pieces of legislation related to education and educational opportunity and entrepreneurship, including the HBCU Partners Act, which we co-wrote and which was signed into law, thank the good Lord. Therefore, I would say we are poised to create, support, and help implement policies that help empower potential and current small business owners to fulfill their dreams, create jobs, and advance economic opportunity. How can HBCUs in Congress help young individuals who are ready to start businesses while they are in school or after they graduate?
Well, thank you, Tim. It's great to be on with you. Let me also welcome Senator Hyde-Smith. It's wonderful to once again be a part of this annual HBCU fly-in, and for this Congress to be your co-chair of the HBCU caucus. I believe we have with us Dr. Tony Allen, president of Delaware's HBCU, Delaware State University, and I just wanted to give Tony a shout out for his remarkable job leading this great institution and for his job as co-chair of the inauguration. We've been friends and colleagues for decades, and I'm excited to play some small part in supporting the bipartisan initiatives that we're going to continue carrying forward to support HBCUs. You referenced the Future Act, you referenced the HBCU Partners Act. These were great things that we got done in the last Congress under the previous administration. We are just introducing a bill that we wrote together, Tim, the Next Generation Entrepreneurship Core Act, which really was partly inspired by Shark Tank, as you were just talking about, by something called Venture for America, efforts that recognize that the access to capital, the access to mentoring, the access to market opportunities isn't evenly distributed across our country. Talent is, intellect is, gumption and drive is, but access to capital and mentoring isn't. And so this bill, which I'm really hoping we can advance in this Congress on a bipartisan basis, is a great way to make sure that new entrepreneurs have a way to get over those barriers to entry in terms of capital, know-how, and mentorship. It would fund 320 entrepreneurs in distressed communities around our country, under-resourced communities, and having explicit partnerships with HBCUs, in my view, would be a great way to help accelerate the deployment and the impact of this bill that we're just introducing together, Tim.
Well, thank you for your partnership, frankly. And as many do not know, you and I both have co-chaired the Senate Prayer Breakfast, and I will say that your faith is inspiring and your commitment, frankly, to the community. Sometimes we see different ways to solve the same problem, but the one thing I can always count on from you is an open ear and an interesting and curious mind. That combination allows for us to find common ground on issues like HBCUs and looking for ways to make access to capital, which of course we both know are significant impediments to growing businesses, whether they're black ones or white ones or brown ones. It doesn't really matter what they look like. Impediment to capital is a major issue, but specifically for minority businesses, it is sometimes a mountain and not just a molehill to getting there. And your commitment to the legislation that you and I are working on, and frankly, your commitment to the last 4 or 5 fly-ins has been profound in our partnership. It's actually produced fruit, and I thank you for your answer and thank you for your partnership as well. Many minorities face significant hurdles in finding affordable and responsible access to credit. Because of the pandemic and frankly, the massive scale of lending that was distributed to small businesses, the SBA found that minority-owned businesses simply have a harder time accessing credit. Even more troubling is that there has been, for several years, long times of slumps in new business creation. Now, that is a really important point to hone in on, because as a former small business owner myself, I can tell you that if you don't have small businesses and communities, you will always have high unemployment. Small businesses employ a disproportionate share of our workforce and a significant share of our folks who graduate from colleges all across this country. Fortunately, we have seen encouraging figures recently from the Census Bureau, which has found that the number of new business applications actually went up during the pandemic. Now, that may be because of some challenging reasons, but to both panelists, given the increase in new businesses during the pandemic and what we know about the hurdles to obtaining affordable credit, how can Congress not only encourage the rising trend in new business creation, but how can Congress also effectively make it easier for small business owners, and specifically minority small business owners, to succeed by increasing access to credit?
Senator Hyde-Smith, I'm happy to defer to you, and then I'm happy to answer.
Well, first of all, thank you for having this today. And I missed the in-person fly-in, but I'm so glad that we can gather today. And I appreciate the opportunity to meet with all of you. And I'm so very proud of the colleges and universities that we have, the HBCUs in Mississippi. We have 6. 4 I have toured multiple times and throughout the many years. And it's an honor to be able to work with you and maybe just do something that can make a major difference in my state. You know, we have to recognize the economic consequences of COVID that has been just so horrible on every business, but, you know, affecting working mothers and the minorities disproportionately. That's, you know, is what I have seen. And we have to look at ways that we can offset part of the tragedy that we've gone through the last year. But Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada and I, we're offering legislation to invest in developing technologies, the STEM education and workforce development to address some of these issues that would actually provide $50 million to begin helping small businesses and medium-sized businesses of hiring and training professional in the STEM field, and particularly those who are Black, Latino, females, and in rural areas where this is really a challenge. I'm working with a young man now that is friends with my nephew. I've, you know, known him for a long time, and he is wanting to do some things in the agriculture field. And to have that opportunity to work with him, he came up and just probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, he said, "Aunt Cindy, I need some help." And he just affectionately referred to me as that because, you know, he has got such potential, but there's challenges for him. And I realize that. But, you know, we're supporting things like a Bank Enterprise Award Program and the community development financial institutions, every thing that we have access to, the small business development centers. And, you know, it's one thing to just give somebody a website or a telephone number, but it's another thing to follow up and say, where are you having these challenges and how can I help you the most? Because they do have to have a lot of guidance because, you know, as electronically savvy as most of them are, there's still things that they're going to obviously hit a few patches in the road that they need to get over and they need access to. And being in this position, it's certainly an opportunity that we can help smooth their way. But the Minority Business Development Agency, you know, it's there to promote growth in minority-owned businesses. And it's, you know, we're having to stimulate the economy. We're having to create jobs. And as you can tell, I can get really excited about this. But it's so much fun. In fact, yesterday I was texting with our new football coach at Jackson State University, Deion Sanders. What an amazing guy. And his spirit is so there for it's heartfelt. He is there to help these minority groups. And if anybody can bring things progressively forward, it is Deion Sanders. And I'm so fortunate that he's at Jackson State and that he has reached out, and we are working on opportunities to help build programs there, but mainly to improve the lives of these young men and women that need that extra help. So, you know, I know I've said a lot, but, you know, we do have an economic issue here that we're having to recover from. Thanks for letting me be part of that.
Well, Cindy, once again, during my introduction, I talked about how you have succeeded in so many ways, not only being the first female elected statewide in Mississippi, but your work in the state senate, as well as the agricultural and statewide leader that you have been, your focus on ag, and frankly, listening to your adopted nephew, so to speak, ask for advice and wisdom. And frankly, that's how it works. I mean, one of the things that we don't talk enough about is the importance of mentors and sponsors, people who have been where we're going and people who can help us get there faster. And so to hear you providing that, not as a United States Senator, but just as an aunt, I think is an important part of the equation. And Chris, I know that you are ready to lean into this question, so I'll stop talking and start listening.
Well, thanks, Tim. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Senator Hyde-Smith. I'm excited to roll up my sleeves and get to work with all of the HBCU leaders who are on this call, with the new incoming leaders of the SBA, the Department of Commerce. We've got great resources that Congress on a bipartisan basis appropriated at the end of last year, the $12 billion in CDFIs that Senator Hyde-Smith just referenced, the resources that are going to be now available through the Minority Business Development Agency. In my home state of Delaware, we have both a Women's Business Development Center and a Minority Business Development Center that are active and engaged. We also have a program that was founded in Delaware, forgive me, that's why I always bring it up, called SCORE. SCORE is one of the most effective and efficient federal programs. It's almost all volunteers, very low staff, very low cost, very high impact. They do mentoring for folks who are starting a small business. I'd love to work with my colleagues on expanding that and reauthorizing it. The larger point, Tim, that we're all agreeing on here is that the American people are fundamentally entrepreneurial. They love taking a chance. They love putting themselves out there and taking the risk. But we know that in this recession and in this pandemic, some of the folks who have been pushed out of safe, long-term jobs and are now starting a small business, they're going to need help getting access to capital, getting access to markets, getting technical assistance. And so the SBA office in Delaware has been terrific. The folks at Delaware State University have been terrific, but I think we can and should do more to make sure that those resources are available and that it's accessible and that it's engaging to reduce red tape and bureaucratic barriers to business formation and success, and to provide access to capital and to markets at home and abroad. So I'm excited to work with everyone who's on this call. It has been a tough year since this last fly-in. It was just a year ago, and I remember being with you in the Kennedy caucus room right here in the Russell Senate office building as the pandemic was just beginning to become clear as a threat to all of us. Thank you for what you've done. I know this has been hard. I know that you've struggled to stay open and to stay engaged and to stay positive. And that's why we were diligent about making sure that there was relief for HBCUs in the CARES Act. And I'm excited to keep working together to deliver more relief this year as well.
Well, Chris, before you leave the plate, you have started answering the next question. So I want you to stay right there. Keep the bat in your hand. Keep your eye on the ball, because here comes the next one. Many minority and women entrepreneurs have trouble finding technical assistance. I know that you're going to tell me about Delaware again because you have a reason to celebrate called
It's
SCORE.
a hobby.
Well, listen, I love celebrating South Carolina and our national championships from schools in that state, from Coastal Carolina, the University of South Carolina, and Clemson. But I won't do that right now, Chris. I won't do that right now.
You know I've got a son at Notre Dame, and you're just rubbing it in.
The truth will set you free. But aside from access to credit, a lot of people coming out of college or those looking to start a business are overwhelmed with all of the information that is out there. Oftentimes, the recipe for success here is high quality technical assistance. We saw the MBDA that you just mentioned and Cindy did as well, and the SBA provide technical assistance to employers during the pandemic through the PPP rollout. And that really made a difference. As you both will recall, we added to the package that passed last year $10 million for the MBDA to help market to minority businesses the availability of the Paycheck Protection Program, because so many small businesses like the one I had to be the CEO, the head of the Human Resources Department, and a part of the legal team. So small businesses need help retaining their employees, especially now. Last week, many of us, and I introduced the Enhancing Entrepreneurship for the 21st Century Act, along with Amy Klobuchar, which would require the Secretary of Commerce to work with other governmental agencies to conduct a comprehensive study into the underlying factors driving the current startup slump, not startup, a wonderful time to start a business, not the startup frenzy, but the startup slump. Senator Coons, how can we encourage more technical assistance, especially for entrepreneurs who might be coming right out of college and who might need help getting their businesses off the ground?
Couple things, if I can, Tim, and I'm excited to work with you on this. On the Small Business Committee, out of everything that we did last year, and I'll remind you, that CARES Act that we passed a year ago, March, was unanimous. Every senator voted
96-0. You got it.
The piece of it that was most constructive and frankly most fun to work on was the small business piece of it. And look, nothing's perfect. In 10 days, we went from blank sheet of paper to an 800-page bill and spent $2.3 trillion. It was big. But one of the things all of us recognized quickly was that the businesses that had the fastest, easiest access to those PPP loans were big and already had a relationship with their lender and had a relationship with a big lender. And the ones that had the most trouble, who were calling me or my office or my staff late at night, first thing in the morning, showing up at the house, texting, were exactly those businesses that had 3 employees or 5 employees and weren't sure about all the paperwork or the rules or how do you fill out these forms. One of the things the administration has just done is to pause the PPP second round for 2 weeks, and only businesses with 20 employees or fewer are eligible to apply for this 2-week window that was designed to make sure, right? But we're going to have to work together to make sure that SBA gets more staff able to do technical assistance, staff that understand the language and the communication style and the worldview of people 23 to 25 who are more digital, who are more online, who are less likely to show up at a physical office and stand in line for an hour and look for a paper form in triplicate. They're looking for something they can do on their phone. And the businesses that they're starting are more digital and more agile. So we did increase, as you mentioned, through the bill, the staffing available for technical assistance, but that staffing needs to be culturally competent, regionally distributed, and digitally savvy. One of the reasons I'm excited about our Next Generation Entrepreneurship Core Act is that it would help provide the funding and staffing and support mentorship for several hundred, 320 young startups a year, and provide the staffing that would do the technical assistance. I look forward to developing that and other bills in partnership with my 2 colleagues. But I think we need to recognize the hurdles that exist out there for those who've got the gumption and the skills and the passion, but maybe don't have the access to capital or to mentoring. We can be a part of that solution.
Well, and Chris, as you know, the partnership that you and I have shared, have been able to forge over time, has been powerful, frankly, not for you and for me, but for those of us who we are trying to help. And I will simply say that 320, we hope, as it becomes more and more successful, that will grow to 2,400 or even beyond that. So you put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, as it relates to making sure that future entrepreneurs have the resources, and that includes the technical assistance to be successful. What you've described in similar fashion to the success of the 8-8 program through the SBA, having that mentor, wouldn't you agree, makes a huge difference?
Huge. Having someone who helps you navigate the complexities of federal contracting makes all the difference in the world. I literally just 2 days ago was talking to a small business owner, an entrepreneur in Delaware, who is asking me to help connect him to a mentor. He's moving into doing road and highway construction and figuring out the bid packages and the contracting process. He's very capable of doing the work. He just needs that guidance on when is this meeting at DelDOT and who are the people I got to talk to and how do I fill out those forms? We can play a big role, and that's exactly what we ought to be delivering the resources for. And I think HBCUs would be a great partner through faculty, through staff, and through recently graduated members in delivering that support for new entrepreneurs.
I'll say this, Cindy Hyde-Smith, our great senator from Mississippi, one of the things that we should pay attention to at home right now is that we're always looking for bipartisan coalitions working together for a common good, not on compromise, but common ground. We all understand and appreciate the necessity of building the future workforce. And frankly, Chris Coons working with Cindy Hyde-Smith is a classic example of a bipartisan coalition on the same ground, because we all care about our future and that future starts at some of our HBCUs. So let me ask you a question, Senator Hyde-Smith. Before coming to Capitol Hill, as I've said a couple of times, you led Mississippi's Department of Agriculture and Commerce, overseeing two sectors where private sector investment has produced innovations that have highly benefited consumers and the broader economy. Though venture capital investments have had a huge impact on the entrepreneurial ecosystems over the last 4 decades, the wider industry and how it operates frequently remains somewhat of a mystery for so many people. Today, we want to try to help pull back the curtain and close the knowledge gap so that budding entrepreneurs and the HBCUs that educate them become better equipped to consider more meaningful engagement with the venture capital industry. Here's the question, by the way. How can HBCUs work with the venture capital industry in a way that is productive and beneficial, not just to HBCUs or those students, but also for those investors?
Well, obviously, a lot of that's going to be communication and exposure, and helping the HBCUs identify their own potential. They know those students. They know the ones that they're in that business class or in that ag class that have that drive, have the eye of the tiger, that can succeed in entrepreneurship, and to help identify who those people are. But we can help by actually putting together the venture capitalists, making them aware of the opportunities that's there. And, I think a lot of them out there, they just don't understand the potential. They don't understand the value that is there until we kind of direct them toward that. And I think that that's our job. I think that's our opportunity as we rebuild this post-pandemic economy. And, and it's the good stuff. It's the fun stuff to watch them, those who you don't expect to blow it out the top, to help them climb, to help them find their footing in ways that finance is what makes the world go round. Any rancher, any farmer, anybody in the ag world can tell you finance makes the world go round. And when you take that young person that already has that desire, that potential, and you take that instructor that can see that, and you connect those with venture capitalists of saying, we're not giving a shotgun blast of we've got 100 students, let's filter through, but let the HBCUs help in identifying the shining stars, the opportunities, and those that may not believe quite as much in themselves as that professor can see that all they have to do is bring out that inner entrepreneurship to help them build and let them see it in themselves. That to me is what can really progress us. It's what can make this thing work. But to bring that value in front of the capital ventures, the investors, to say, we have a lot to offer here. And the ground is so fertile. It's so fertile because, I haven't been on Capitol Hill very long, but it didn't take me long to realize that obviously people are going to listen to us. And when we present that to the venture capitalist of what we have to offer, but the satisfaction of how it makes them feel to help somebody that you did not think would succeed, but fully capable of it with the right assets, with the right resources, and with the right guidance. That's called fulfillment. That's called fulfillment in life, but it also betters our country, betters our state. It increases our economy because the basic fundamentals of economics are always the same. But to help someone find that, to apply those basic fundamentals, and so much of it is to prevent them from making some grave mistakes that get them so far in debt that they're not going to overcome it. So preventing mistakes, giving them the opportunity to grow and to build, that's, we're just really beginning to see a lot of that, of the firm steps takes to build relationships. And I love seeing young people start out. I know a little guy right now, he's 22 years old. He was really good at building fences. He has built a major business. And it just amazes me that when you see those that can actually do it just with a little enhancement, our job is to provide that enhancement.
Amen. I love it. I love it. I like that. That'll preach.
Sing a song now. We're going to sing a hymn.
Well, we can't take up a collection, that's for sure. So we'll say, Chris Coons will be leading the song. The sermon is now over. The benediction is coming. However, we got 2 more questions before that benediction hits us in this segment. This question, of course, is for both of you as we get to the last 2 questions. In my home state of South Carolina, venture capital investments have strengthened sectors like consumer products and services, IT, health, biotech, and pharma. Since 2015, $627 million in VC investments have benefited those industries throughout the Palmetto State. Traditionally, VC firms have been geographically concentrated in 3 dominant hubs for venture activity: the Bay Area, Boston, and New York. However, more recently, a growing number of firms have opted to shift their operations to cities outside of those hubs like Austin, Salt Lake City, Nashville, and of course, Atlanta. How will these sort of moves impact the geographic distribution of VC investments and the types of startups that receive VC investments?
You want me to start with that one, Tim?
Yes, that'd be great, Chris.
So, one of my great hopes is that we will take advantage of this moment of opportunity. I've seen the same pattern you just referenced, Tim. VC activities highly concentrated, places like Research Triangle, North Carolina, no disrespect to Thom Tillis, Route 128 corridor, but not in places in Delaware, not in places in Pennsylvania. I know we've got President Aaron Walton of Cheney University, our nation's oldest HBCU, with us, someone with a real business experience. Getting that VC activity, that venture capital investment activity, out of the few places of very high concentration and out to 2nd and 3rd tier cities and communities like Wilmington, like Jackson, like the suburbs of Philadelphia, like Charleston, is part of what I'm excited about. A piece of that is making sure that federal research dollars are being better distributed. Delaware State has NSF, NASA, NIH research grants. As a science appropriator, one of the things I've been pushing is more of that being allocated and available outside the very few super high concentrations of federally funded research. I'm taking nothing away from your Johns Hopkins and your Harvard, who get hundreds and billions of dollars of federal money. But there's got to be room under this sun for the 2nd and 3rd tier states, cities, and universities. And when we coordinate that federal investment, we can then attract VCs and accelerate opportunity. At Delaware State University, there's a Center for Economic Development, which is funded in part by the Department of Commerce. It helps create that new cadre of entrepreneurs, those folks who have small businesses worthy of venture investment. But we've got to do a better job of pulling it all together. Tim, I think it'd be fun for us to do an HBCU Shark Tank and to put together in one place at one time some of the real sharks from TV, and I'm happy to help try and find them and connect with them, some investors, and some of the startups that are spinning out of HBCUs that are worthy of their attention and time. I think this is something Steve Case, founder of AOL, would be happy to help us with, and I'd love to see if we can't make that happen.
Well, Chris, that sounds like a challenge worthy of our collective efforts. So let's go ahead and do that. I am looking forward to that. Cindy, I'm going to give you a chance to answer the first question from the audience. I think we should go ahead and do that. I look forward to your answer to the question, which is, how can HBCUs and the SBA partner together to mentor future entrepreneurs?
Wow, I think that bringing them on campus, engaging the relationship, to build the relationships with the staff, the faculty there on these campuses, of making them aware of what SBA has to offer. as I said before, it's communication. It's letting them know what they have. It is the engagement of the two that truly want to help these students and to make it easier. But, we're making a lot of progress there in Mississippi because, with the COVID that came about, we're looking at everybody that had the opportunity to take care of the paycheck protection plans. They're looking at agencies differently because, they didn't need them until there was a crisis. Basically, a lot of them didn't need them. But, we're really proud of different programs. Innovate Mississippi is one. Mm-hmm. But if SBA could engage more on college campuses with the appropriate classes, whether it be business classes or, obviously it's not for medical things,
Yes.
It's not for every section of the curriculum, but for the curriculum that it would be, I would really, this is making me want to be more of a part of making sure that they engage with the colleges and universities.
Well, Cindy, your answer has inspired me as well. I got to say that is just a brilliant answer to a very important question, one that is kind of common sense, but hasn't been done before. We should, the three of us should go to our SBA, the new administrator, and encourage that type of partnership. I can tell you that folks like James Clark at the South Carolina State University, I've graduated from MIT, understands business, has worked really hard to improve the outcome for the kids or the students at South Carolina State University. He would be chomping at the bit to have the SBA on his campus. I spoke recently with Dr. Artis at Benedict, and I'll just tell you, she's in that virtual house, so to speak. She would welcome more opportunities to engage with the agencies than she has before. The school is on the right trajectory, but both of you have hit the nail on the head that we need more engagement from our agencies in order to improve the outcome of our nation, not of the HBCU, not simply of the student, for our nation as a whole. We depend on the talent being produced at some of our HBCUs. The next question was asked in multiple ways by multiple folks in our audience today. It is, why is financial literacy? Why is financial literacy important for HBCU students who want to become entrepreneurs? And how can HBCUs increase financial literacy? It is a topic that I love to talk about, but I'm not the one doing the talking today. So Chris, Cindy, either one of you want to take the first bite at that apple?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Well, this is really a passion of mine. As a state senator for 12 years, I introduced a bill that financial literacy had to be taught in high schools because we teach them how to do everything else. They can't balance a checkbook when they get out. And when they get to that freshman year and that sophomore year and they're about to graduate, they get all these credit cards that are offered to them as students. It's like, oh, here's $10,000 credit. I see you're graduating in May. It gets them in trouble because of the lack of financial literacy. And it is just so critical for anybody, every American that takes a breath, but it is lacking in these school systems and it's lacking in colleges and universities of financial literacy, because it doesn't matter if you're going, whatever you choose to do in life, that is one of the most critical things that we can offer. And it is the biggest deficit that I can think of. So Chris, I'll give you a chance. I'll back off.
So speaking as the guy from the state where more credit cards are issued than anywhere else, I would love to work with you on increasing financial literacy. The folks who don't want to see people take on more debt than they can pay are the folks who make student loans or who issue credit cards. It's actually not in their interest to have people default on their college loans or on their credit cards. And I think we can and should do a better job at financial literacy in our schools and in our society. We frankly could do a better job at financial literacy among senators, because we all know you can read a balance sheet. We are not heading in a good direction. Let me not dwell too long on that point.
Yeah, no, that would take the whole afternoon, Chris, to dwell on that one.
So physician, heal thyself. I can hear you, Tim. I do think that something that we could do that would make a lasting contribution is to make sure that young people, as they are nearing graduation from high school, understand three things: the enormous lifetime value of completing high school, doing some post-high school education, and in particular, getting a four-year degree. On average, it's worth $1 million more in lifetime earnings. Second, the risk of taking on debt to go to college and not finishing. Most of the people who default on college loans actually owe a very small amount, $3,000, $5,000. It's not the people who owe $100,000 or $200,000. It's the folks who go for a semester or two, have a family issue, drop out, and never pay it off and never get the degree. And I know that's an area that folks like Sally Mae and Navient and folks like the college leaders and presidents on this call would love to work together to eliminate or reduce or eliminate student loan defaults. And then last, helping people understand what are the proper uses of credit. Having a credit card that you pay off on time, where you develop a good credit score, and where you're able to borrow in order to purchase things can be a real blessing. Having a credit card that you don't know how to use and that you get into trouble with and destroys your credit and ties you down is a disaster. Cindy, I'd love to work with you on that. It makes me happy.
Well, let me just say, both of you, I'm looking forward to seeing you both work together on this issue of financial literacy. I cannot tell you how often I hear the importance of this, the issue of financial literacy. I know that my friends at Morris College, Leroy Staggers and Denmark, Willie Todd Jr., both would say amen to making sure that student loan defaults go down, not up. Thank them both for being with us today. Thank you both, actually, for being with us today, Senator Coons and Senator Hyde-Smith. We've run out of time. That is a good problem to have. Stay tuned and hold tight for the next part of the segment of our HBCU Fly-In. We are going to highlight the significance of African-American leadership in the armed services and how to best position HBCUs for partnerships with the Department of Defense. Millions of dollars flow out of the DoD in partnership with our HBCUs. And you're going to want to hear from our next two panelists on how to make sure that your team is a part of the team. Hold on to your seats. Here we come.
Today, we enjoy the most diverse population in the history of our nation. Universities serve as a forum for the exchange of scholarly ideas and philosophies designed to prepare students to become the leaders, problem solvers, and innovators that we need to build a more robust and inclusive society. Diversity enriches the educational experience. It sparks creativity, challenges stereotype perceptions, and fosters greater intellectual strength. It helps students to learn from each other, understand and communicate effectively with people who look differently, think differently, and come from different places. Diversity strengthens our communities and the workplace. At Coppin State University, we realize that our diverse campus, it not only brings about new ideas, experiences, and solutions, it also has propelled us to become one of the nation's leading urban universities. Diversity reflects who we are as a people and makes us a better nation.
As the nation's only historically Black and Catholic university, we know the importance of diversity across all fields. Diversity matters because when we bring together the many peoples of diverse backgrounds, cultures, and religions and more who make up this nation, we increase creativity and innovation, the promotion of high-quality decision-making, and enhance the economy and even the society. As educators, it is our duty to guide the next generation as they seek a more equitable, just, and humane society.
Greetings. Thanks for allowing me to participate in the 5th annual HBCU Fly-In. I applaud Senator Tim Scott and his great staff on moving things forward. I also think the panel and the topics this year are very timely and beneficial. Though I'm currently not in Congress, I continue to work on these efforts, partnering with CEO Michelle Kang of Cognosante, providing fellowships and scholarships to the great students of HBCUs. God bless, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Senator Tim Scott for this opportunity to participate in the 5th annual HBCU Fly-In. This year's theme, HBCUs Redefining CEO, Cultivating Executive Opportunities, is critically important. I was pleased to join other HBCU presidents recently to discuss with a corporate leader how to develop sustainable mechanisms for our graduates to fulfill corporate needs for diverse talent. As we have demonstrated to numerous corporate partners over the years, HBCUs have the talent they are looking for and, in fact, need to achieve any milestones regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity in the workplace brings innovation that makes us a stronger nation.
In America, diversity is so important because diversity is who we are. One of the things that makes our nation unique is that being an American is not a race, it's not an ethnicity, it's not a religion. An American is the commitment to the ideal that every man, woman, and child is born equal in the eyes of God with the opportunity to go as far as their talent and their work will take them. And every time we take a step closer to living up to that principle, we take a step closer to perfecting the American ideal. That's why diversity is so important, because diversity is who we are.
I am Carrie Dixon, Chancellor of Elizabeth City State University. Diversity is very important. Elizabeth City State University is proud to be the only institution in North Carolina to offer a 4-year degree in aviation science. As an HBCU in rural northeastern North Carolina, we are not only meeting the occupational demand for this industry, but also increasing its diversity. The FAA and aviation industry have made increasing diversity a top priority as a major pipeline for training pilots along with other aviation jobs. ECSU plays a significant role in making that happen.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I hope you are enjoying this HBCU fly-in. If you answered who was expelled from their HBCU, if you said Samuel L. Jackson, you are correct. So congratulations to the 63% of us who got that answer. We will be starting our next panel, African American Leadership in Armed Services, in just a few moments.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around. I know that we're almost at the end, but you don't want to miss this next panel. First of all, I would like to personally thank each of you for joining us today. We have presidents from all over the country, but I have been remiss in mentioning President Lester McCorn from Clinton College, as well as Interim President Ronnie Hopkins at Voorhees, Provost Carl Wright from Claflin, and the CEO of the South Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, Jeff Perez. What do they all have in common? They're from my home state. So thank you all, along with the others that I've already mentioned, for joining us and participating in this important work that we are doing, trying to bring more power, influence to our students at HBCUs. The topic of this panel, African American Leadership in the Armed Services, is so important. For many folks, the military offers an alternative path to employment and an opportunity to develop leadership skills that translate to success in so many different fields. Many college students decide that joining the armed services is not only an opportunity to hone their professional skills, but an honorable way to serve their country. In the United States, HBCUs educate some of the brightest minds in the world. As institutions of higher learning, HBCUs are uniquely positioned to provide capable and competent students with military opportunities for which they may be unaware. I'm excited to discuss this important topic today with two of my fellow colleagues in the Senate, Senator Marsha Blackburn and Senator Thom Tillis. Senator Blackburn represents the great state of Tennessee. She currently sits on the Armed Services Committee herself and the Veterans Affairs Committee. Senator Blackburn represents 6 HBCUs and 3 military bases from her home state of Tennessee. Senator Blackburn, I recently noticed Federal Express, they announced $5 million in grants to Tennessee's HBCUs, and your relation at that decision, it was remarkable. Would you like to briefly speak on that, as well as the importance of HBCUs in your state?
Oh, absolutely, Tim. Thank you so much. And thank you for the leadership that you bring every single year to this issue. And I know that Senator Tillis joins me in just being thrilled to jump in and talk about careers in the armed services for a little bit. But yes, FedEx just recently made a sizable grant to the HBCUs in our state. Here is one of the reasons why. The Labor Department projects that in just 5 years, our current education pipeline is only going to be able to fill 19% of about 3.5 million open computing jobs in the US.
Wow.
This is the rate at which those high-tech skills are being needed, and our computer skills are being needed. We see this in our military. We're seeing it in other sectors of our economy. And that is why my Advanced Manufacturing Jobs in America Act that Senator Rosen and I are doing is so vitally important. And then also we have had provisions in the NDAA that will address the needs that are going to be there for 21st century warfare, looking at our growing cyber defense needs that we have in our, not only in our state, but also in our country. So the money from FedEx is going to help to fill this void. It will train more bright, up and coming students to move forward and take leadership positions in this arena. And we are just so pleased with this.
Well, thank you, Senator Blackburn. Now I understand why you were elated about the opportunity to see Federal Express invest in HBCUs in Tennessee. Thank you so much for sharing that exciting news. Senator Tillis hails from my neighboring state, the other Carolina, of course, North Carolina. We are happy to have him back for another HBCU fly-in. Both Senator Blackburn and Tillis have joined me in previous years. I want to say thank you to both of you for being committed to this cause. Senator Tillis has served on the Senate Armed Services Committee for the last 6 years, almost 7 years. He represents, as I said, 11 HBCUs and 12 military bases in his state. Senator Tillis was recognized for his support of HBCUs last year, making the 2020 HBCU honor roll. Now, Senator Thom, I just got to ask you, I never made an honor roll, so I am happy to hear that you have made an honor roll, even if it's in the United States Senate. Senator Tillis, I know this must have been such a great honor for you, for all the hard work that you've put in. Tell us briefly what that meant to you and anything else you want to say about your great home state from a military standpoint or HBCUs.
Well, thank you. And by the way, I hope you stay in the Senate for a long time, but if you decide to leave, I'm sure you'll spend some in the ministry, but you should consider a career in broadcasting as well. You know, you've talked about the HBCU tradition in North Carolina. We're home to the oldest HBCU and the largest HBCU. And at A&T, my roots with A&T go back to the mid-90s when I proposed a diversity recruiting practice at Price Waterhouse. And the partners were vexed with the challenge that we had at PW that we have in military services. Why aren't we getting more diversity in our ranks? Why don't we have more coming up to the partner ranks? And my suggestion was, we're not present. We're not out there. We're not recruiting and getting those best and brightest to come into the practice. That's why I was happy to co-sponsor the bill, the HBCU Partners Act. And part of what we have to do is show up. With 12 military installations in North Carolina, with our one of the largest populations of HBCUs in the country in our state, we have to get out there and really identify people and educate them on very different options today than in the past. When we talk about how can we encourage people to go into the military or go into the defense industry, we should let them know it's a very different military today. Cyber opportunities, security opportunities, the things that we can offer early, and maybe as early as high school, before they've even made a choice to go to an HBCU, can really give them a track that leads them to serve, or at least serve in the defense industry. So I think it's a key part of showcasing, look, we're home to the Global Response Force at Fort Bragg. We're home to 45% of all the Marines that serve in our Marine Corps. We're home to the largest Coast Guard air station in the United States up in Elizabeth City. We need to figure out how we educate those young people in high school and young people in college about the tremendous opportunities they have. At the same time, we have to work on making sure that they can see a path all the way up to Secretary of Defense, which we proudly now have an African American for the first time in this nation's history serving as SecDef. The other thing I will tell you is a lot of these matters swim into my lanes on Personnel Subcommittee. I chaired it for the last two Congresses. I'll be ranking member in this Congress. So part of what we have to do is make very clear the paths in military service are very different today than they've been at any time in our nation's history. And I believe that we have enormously talented men and women going to HBCUs that need to fully understand the breadth of opportunities that they have.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. And I will say that without any question, when you think about the fact that 45% of the Marines end up in North Carolina, and frankly, Parris Island's where we actually make the Marines. Frankly, we don't train them, we have to make them. And Parris Island in South Carolina, Beaufort County, the Carolinas have a strong, powerful impact on our nation's military response. Thank you for sharing that commitment from your state and frankly from yourself, and recognizing General Austin as the first African American to be the Secretary of Defense is also important. But we actually have an opportunity to hear from the third panelist, who is not a United States Senator. Frankly, he has a higher calling. He is a Lieutenant Colonel in the United States military. Senator Tillis, Senator Blackburn, you have the special privilege of being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Antonio Pittman, who is a professor of military science at South Carolina State University in Orangeburg, South Carolina, the home of the Bulldogs. He is the head of the Army ROTC program. He is himself a graduate of an HBCU, Benedict College, and frankly continued his education receiving a Master's of Arts from Webster College in Management and Leadership. Lieutenant Colonel is also a graduate from the Field Artillery Officer Basic Course and Captain's Career Course and the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College Officer Course. We are thrilled to have you with us today. Let me pause for a moment, sir, so that we can A, hear from you, but B, before we hear from you, thank you on behalf of a country that is blessed with people like yourself who are willing to put your life on the line for all of us to live in a country filled with peace and tranquility on a daily basis consistently. Thank you for your service, and I look forward to hearing your opening remarks.
Hey, sir, thanks for that comment. Thanks for your support. I'm definitely proud to serve. Also, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this panel today. So on behalf of my commander, Colonel Trevor Hill, the commander of the 4th Brigade, U.S. Army Cadet Command located at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and the Commanding General, U.S. Army Cadet Command at Fort Knox, Kentucky, Major General John R. Evans. I'm humbled to be here today. I hope my presence is beneficial and my insight reaches all who are listening today. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention to thank you, Senator Scott, and your family for your brother, retired Command Sergeant Major Ben R. Scott, who served, I think, 32 years in the armed forces. I don't know him, but he's mentored a couple of my friends in the medical field. So thank you and your family for his service as well.
Well, thank you for saying that, Lieutenant Colonel Pittman. I will let my brother know he is the uglier of the Scott brothers, but everybody has a cross to bear. He's also the smartest of the Scott brothers, so he's got that on his side. So you've just heard from my three colleagues who are going to be talking on this panel, advocates for HBCUs, advocate for our military, who understand and appreciate the necessity of fusing those two together during these unprecedented, challenging times that we currently are in the middle of. So let's get to the questions that we have for the panelists as we are running out of time. I know that both have been able to join us, but Senator Blackburn has a stop around 10 minutes from now. So I want to be very cautious to not overrun that time and to respect her limited time with us. We're going to start the conversation today with a few questions. Then we will move on to questions from the audience. So I'm preparing you in advance for the time that you have to ask the questions. Our first question for Senator Tillis is, can you talk to me about the importance of the collaborative efforts between HBCUs and the military and the response that means for the country?
I understand from staff that my audio is bad. Can you hear me okay?
Your audience now is clear as a bell. You have an amazing team fixing problems on the fly.
Well, to be truthful, I had to do it myself, but you know, I really believe that that's why I think the HBCU Partners Act is very important. Thank you for your leadership in moving that forward. I think that we need to put meaning to that. We have to be out there. We have to educate people on academic tracks that fit well with service in the military or in the defense industry, because there could be, one of the things we're working on in the personnel subcommittee is this idea that maybe you surf out in the private sector for a while, you develop hot skills that are critically important for military personnel or civilian personnel who work within the DoD. We need to really open up all the opportunities. I remember vividly the first recruiting event we did at NCA&T back in 1996 or 1997 at Price Waterhouse, just opening up the students' minds to all the opportunities in management consulting that they hadn't really thought about before, and how their academic track going forward should be influenced by that. So I think you got to be out there. It can't be something on paper that you hope people do. What we need to do with the Partners Act is now have measurable activities on the campuses, communicating and making sure that all of those bright students understand the real opportunities and the specific jobs, and then the career path. If they don't want to make a career out of the military or in the defense industry, how this also tracks to other careers as they progress.
Great answer. Thank you so much for the answer. Senator Blackburn, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, and frankly, I think you're the first woman to be elected statewide in the state of Tennessee. So you understand the importance of diverse representation, frankly, in your state, in Congress. Can you talk to me about the importance of what maybe Congress can do to promote diversity in the military, and what you've seen as a member of the Armed Services Committee, whether it's women or minorities in the military?
I certainly will. And just picking up where Thom left off with the Partners Act and carrying that forward for students that have been in an ROTC program and then come out and want to serve in the National Guard. It is important that we extend these opportunities through the Guard, because we need so many diverse skill sets right now. And you may want to pursue that alongside your daytime career. And this is especially true when we talk about skills in the cyber area and needing those skills. And when we were looking at ROTC programs, I was disappointed that not any of our HBCUs have an ROTC program in the state. So that is something that we are going to need to work on. Now, the military released a workplace and equal opportunity survey last year, and they had asked different groups about their perceptions of the military. And I thought this was so important. This was such a vital question to ask at the outset of the survey, because we all know that perception is reality until somebody changes your mind and says that just isn't the way it is, and shows you that, improves it. So the plan was for the military to be able to use this survey to adjust their recruiting tactics and build a more diverse military. And what they found was that minority groups more often experienced racial or ethnic harassment and discrimination, and that they held more negative perceptions of the military because of this. Now, the Navy Recruiting and Personnel Command is actually based in Tennessee, out in the Memphis area at Millington, Tennessee. And they are using this survey and the information from that survey and from other surveys that have been done to adjust the way that they approach potential recruits. And they're talking not just to the recruit, but they're bringing families in. And they're talking about this as a career path. And what we did last year in the Defense Authorization Act was to include a plan for recruiting enhancement that would require an analysis of cultural challenges to include the perception of armed forces recruiting personnel and their methods. And we all know that it is vitally important that the family of the warfighter be satisfied with the quality of life and the acceptance of that warfighter in the ranks.
Well, I will say that, I am so happy to hear that the Navy in Tennessee, Marines, of course, in South Carolina, North Carolina, as well as we have Fort Jackson in South Carolina, where we train about a half or 45% of the new enlisted fellows into the Army. Both our senators have brought up really important points of the opportunity, the potential, and frankly, sometimes the scarcity that may exist in the alignment between HBCUs and our military. My question, Colonel Pittman, is how do we, I'm not sure exactly how to say this, but how do we help remove barriers? How do we identify the barriers, and how do we remove the barriers as it relates to getting more HBCU students and ROTC connected together? How do we promote the armed services on campuses? Is it through ROTC programs? Do we get different HBCUs to partner together, as I think we do in South Carolina? What's the answer? How do we make progress there, sir?
So I think we start early and often. I think we start in the high schools with Gerald. Get those kids on campus of HBCUs, get them to the ROTC department and show them that ROTC can provide a way for them individuals to actually go to school. So I think those barriers inhibit students from the armed service, not necessarily for promotion, but they don't understand because they're not currently in the Army. But for the most part, I think it's more about the fear of the unknown. So as we know, all this Generation Z, what they call Zoomers, have a need to know. So essentially, a play-by-play of what their military career entails. Most students, I believe, understand the dangers of a commitment to service, sacrifice for the country, and are willing to do that. The hindrance, for the most part, Senator Blackburn talked about, is about the influencers. So the parents, mom, dad, grandmother, clergymen, the teachers, the community, who don't really understand service themselves. Therefore, we need to reach the influencers as well as the students. For instance, most do not know or don't realize that it's more opportunities than not to gain experiences gained through the service in terms of leadership, college education, schooling, and skills that relate well to the civilian world in order to be a powerful good in society. The military is full of opportunities. All you have to do is want it, and all you have to do is work hard to get it.
Thank you, Colonel. That is an inspiring message for so many of our students to hear, and certainly our HBCUs benefit from having you on the campus. I appreciate your response. We have a question from the audience. It talks about how can HBCUs help students cultivate the necessary skill set that the DoD may need, whether it's the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard. So I know I heard Senator Tillis talk about the changes that are happening in the military, and Senator Blackburn, I know you only have a minute or two left. To be more succinct, as you look at the military of today and think about the military of tomorrow, what kind of skills should HBCUs and their students be focusing on to be a greater asset to the military needs of our future?
One of the things to put a focus on are the STEM disciplines. And when you look at the impact of 5G technology, artificial intelligence, autonomous vehicles, drones, you know that this is going to take a deep dive into the STEM fields. So this is an area where we should be pumping up those educational opportunities and then drawing that line, as Lieutenant Colonel Pittman said, you know, thinking about the influencers around that young person and showing how a period of time in the military with these STEM skills can open a world of opportunities to them. And that is going to be such an important pathway for us to make certain we clear the obstacles and that we open the doors. And with that, I'm going to have to say my goodbye. Tim, thank you for your leadership. So grateful for this, and thank you for once again including me in your program for the HBCUs.
Marsha, thank you for being here, and thank you for your perspective. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head in a major way. And Senator Tillis, I'll let you put some lead on the target as well. But 5G, AI, autonomous vehicles, drones, STEM, all connect together, and that is a very bright future for our kids and frankly for our nation. Senator, did you want to add anything to that question, or would you rather me go to the next question?
I think really just to underscore it, but what we have to recognize is that the HBCUs, in order for them to encourage and increase the number of people who are going into STEM education, we got to start in the high school and arguably in grade school, because we're not graduating enough students who have expressed an interest or have been successful before they ever graduate from high school. So it has to start there, and then we have to build on it. But it's so important, you know, having chaired the personnel subcommittee for the last 4 years, this is a challenge that we have. Here's the other thing, Tim, then we can move on to the next question. We just had a hearing yesterday in Senate Armed Services that was talking about how we're going to be able to, we've had a major inversion of R&D dollars from DOD into the private sector over the past 15 or 20 years. And we're going to have to also recognize that we may be graduating students from an HBCU that may work in the private sector, but that private sector player may be playing an important role in a collaboration with the Department of Defense. But I, for one, think that we have to go out, identify aptitudes early, build on them, and even in trades programs, this is something I worked on when I was Speaker of the House, we can identify with the tracking that we have for students today, we can reasonably predict by the time that young man or woman is in 7th or 8th grade, where their greatest aptitude is. And then you have to communicate to them what's possible if they just stick to the books and continue their education, whether it's a trade or a STEM profession. And that really starts shortly after they get out of grade school.
That's, you know, I've often heard that your counselor in middle school has a profound impact on the rest of your economic opportunity in life, the tracks that you decide on. You're kind of reinforcing that point from what I'm hearing.
100%. You know, we have in North Carolina, it's called EBOS, and virtually every state, we're now starting to track students and seeing their progress all the way from grade school up to high school. And counselors need to be equipped with that information. It's not that you want to divert somebody away from what they have a passion for.
Yes.
But talk with them about how they can have a plan B, what course of study can best position them for getting admitted to a community college. I'm a product of a community college and then 4 universities before I got my degree over 17 years. But having counselors early, I think a part of what some, if you're like me, first generation, actually my parents didn't graduate from high school. First generation of kids, some of us graduating from college, we didn't have any natural inclination to know what happened after high school. But that middle school counselor can sit down and say, you know, 3-4 years from now, if you focus on this field of study, this is the world of opportunities that you have, and it's within reach. And it really does start with a good relationship and making sure these students take advantage of that counseling relationship.
That's powerful. I will say for every single person listening to this broadcast, so to speak, Thom Tillis just spoke about the power of the American dream, the motivation that comes from folks who see something in you that you may not be able to see in yourself, and then someone who is the spark to make sure that those dreams become a reality. Having two parents who didn't finish high school, you wound up being a United States Senator, which may not be your greatest accomplishment. Being a grandfather, the last time I talked to you, seems to be a much greater accomplishment than being a United States Senator. I know how much you love your kids and your grandkids, but that passion is what makes this nation such an amazing place to call home. Colonel Pittman, you are a veteran, which means you understand the military better than any of us here today. From your experience, how do we increase diversity in the ranks? And specifically, not as a person who works on HBCU campuses for the military today, but as that Benedict College student yesterday, so to speak, who decided to go in this path, becoming a colonel in the military. What wisdom, what advice would you give all of us, especially those students and in HBCUs today?
Okay, first I'll answer the question about diversity.
Yes, sir.
But diversity in the armed forces. So I believe we're not where we want to be, but we're making great strides. If we think in 1948, President Harry S. Truman signed Executive Order 9981, which was the segregation of the armed forces. So therefore, integrating African Americans into the then segregated military. So therefore, opportunities are there. And for me, success is defined as when the preparation meets opportunity. So opportunity created, that's why we have the first African-American Secretary of Defense in General retired Lord R. Alston and General Michael X. Garrett, the 9th African-American in history of the Army to attain the rank of General and the United States Armed Forces Commander. However, diversity doesn't start there. It starts with a Caucasian 4-star general taking time to listen to an African-American lieutenant colonel about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it all starts with the sessions. And the sessions is the act of kids in ROTC, cadets, wanting to join the branch of service that they think suits best them. Combat arms, cyber, loader stations, aviators, and things of that nature. So that general officer was Robert Abrams, who is the commander of the United States Nations Command, Republic of Korea, U.S. Combined Forces Command, and United States Forces Korea. And I'm the lieutenant colonel who he talked to. So that 3-minute conversation and divine intervention from the man above is the reason why I sit here today as the PMS of the prestigious South Carolina State University Army ROTC Bulldog Battalion. So in addition for that, it takes the majority of the leaders to convince our youth or cadets that the Army is a service for a great place to serve. I'm just a minority, so it needs people who doesn't actually look like me to convince them, genuinely convince them, our youth and others, that the Army, the military service, value diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, thank you for frankly, a powerful answer to an important question. I will simply say, I am so thankful to have folks like you and frankly, Robert Abrams, who through divine intervention had that small, short conversation with you that may have changed the trajectory of your life, and many people who now are listening to you, their lives may be changed because of who you are and what you represent. To you, Colonel Pittman, to Senator Tillis, now departed Senator Blackburn, thank you all for participating in such an important conversation. I am certainly thankful. Senator Tillis, if you have any closing remarks, I'll give you a few seconds. We have 3 minutes before we're done. So if you want to take 30 seconds or so and make any closing remarks, I'd love to hear from you. And then as soon as you're done, Colonel Pittman, if you have any, I'm happy to hear from you for 30 or 60 seconds as well so we can finish on time.
Tim, I'll be real quick. Thank you for your leadership here. I saw Mark Walker in a video before we transition to this segment. I know he's a buddy of yours and he's been a great leader in promoting HBCUs. So thank everybody. I want to talk just about two mechanics, particularly for my HBCUs down in North Carolina. Number one, I know the regulatory burden falls hardest on the smallest institutions. Let's talk about how we can right-size regulations so you're spending more money in the classroom and less money in answering to the government. So That's a call that I make every year. I'm going to make it again this year. The other thing is resources. These same institutions may not have grant writers. They may not have staff on hand to understand the possibilities of the federal government. Contact my office. We're happy to work with you, get you to a point to where we can at least fund a grant writer. Let's go after any resources beyond the ones that Tim and members like me want to get to you. And then finally, so proud of Elizabeth City State and Chancellor Dixon. We got that $25 million for the runway improvement. We're improving the flight training program there. And I believe that's going to create a pipeline that's going to consider military service. Thank you so much for your leadership, Tim. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Colonel Pittman, 30 seconds.
All right, so I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here. And my goal is that my success, big and small, inspires those who encounter me and want to be like me. So I owe that to my cadets who I teach, the subordinates that I supervise, anyone I come in contact with while I continue to serve my nation.
Awesome.
Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this great event.
Well, thank you, sir, for being a part of the event. Thank you, more importantly, for your service to our country and the armed forces. Let me just say one more time to all of you who have taken the time to be here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. It has brought a wonderful perspective to all of us. I think we've all learned from the importance of collaboration and our continued efforts to communicate, especially from our own worldview, from our own perspective. I mentioned earlier, Dr. McNeely. Ernest, I want to thank you, sir, for being a part of us today. Allen University, another one of my home state heroes, for joining this today. You all make me proud at home, and I will certainly say that my goal is to make you proud as well. God bless you all. Stay tuned for next year. We'll have the 6th fly-in. Hopefully, my prayer is live and in person. God bless you, and we'll see you sometime really soon.